Hey friends, so we're diving into the world of dairy cows today. We have a cow that just had a calf and we are learning the process of milking and wanted to kind of share our journey with you on what that looks like. So take a listen. All right, so Lacey, we started milking Liesl, or the idea of milking Liesl, when we first got her. And that was 2 years ago we got the idea that eventually she would have a calf and we would milk her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think she's a dairy breed, so it seems only natural to milk her.
Right. And we I would say we were getting ready to go out of town and she started getting some udders. Mm-hmm. This is like fast forward 2 years, and we kind of posted to all the internet experts, and everybody was like, oh, you have like 3 weeks or so. So we were like, all right, well, we've got 3 weeks. Let's when we get back, we'll start figuring out how to milk her. And
that's not how I remember it.
Yeah.
It was different. We got back from vacation and our udders were full essentially when we landed the plane, and one of our children sent us a text with a picture and said, oh, these are bigger, before we got home. And that picture got forwarded to our experts. And that's when we were told 3 weeks or so.
Okay. Maybe that was it.
And yeah, I mean, no one knows. So there's like no harm, no foul. But we did not have 3 weeks.
We certainly didn't.
Within 24 hours, that calf was born, I think.
Yeah. And our initial thought on it was that we were going to take her into the barn and milk her. And so we got, we kind of had to scramble because, we thought we had some time. So we built a head gate. The kids and I spent like a day building a head gate in the barn. And then we went out and bought a milk bucket because you got to have that to get the milk. And then we went and got her, built a laneway to take her down to the barn. And the idea was that she was going to go straight in the barn, straight in the head gate, and we were going to milk.
Yeah, our management style is not really catered to any kind of regimented routine with the animals because while we have the barn, these cows have never even been in the barn. They've gone around it, but they've never actually gone in it. And that's because they're, constantly in movement around the property doing this, regenerative grazing thing. So there's no like cow right outside the barn, walk to the barn situation. We don't feed them at all, except for the grass. So, and hay when we need hay in the winter. So they're not accustomed to us hand feeding or alfalfa or any of the things, grain, which just to put that in perspective, we were at the county fair last year. And I may have said this on another podcast because we were all dumbfounded, our children especially. But we were watching the dairy exhibit where they talk about how dairy cows are raised and reared and taken care of. And they shared that each dairy cow eats 100 pounds of grain a day. And our kids load a lot of grain, or not grain really, but feed for chickens and all the different poultry that we've had, especially. So they know what 50 pounds weighs and then thought that 2 50-pound bags is given to a cow every day. It was just unfathomable. I mean, they just were shocked. But you have to realize that those cows get zero grass. So that's
all their food.
Their only food. But anyway, so that's like, what product are you even getting at the end of that? First of all, you feed them all this grain. If you don't know, we're into raw milk. So then you pasteurize that milk, like just what are you even getting from these cows? I don't know. It's not what cows were designed to make. That's for sure. Lots of inputs and manipulations and productivity enhancements and whatnot. So yeah, careful what you drink. But back to the point. So we were excited to potentially have milk from this cow. We get really great raw local milk. So we're not as committed to this need to supply our family. We have access. However, it would be great to supplement and be able to make more of the things like cheeses and yogurts and butter and all the things that we dairy related that we can't afford to make with that raw milk that we're sourcing from our local farmers. So yeah, I don't know. It's a tough place to be because it's not a desperate situation, but we have this cow and we're moving this cow around.
Yeah.
And now we're having this conversation with her, like, you're going to have to give us something or you're going to have to go because we can't just afford a giant cow pet on the property.
So you're jumping a little bit to the end.
We're going back and forth.
Yeah. So we got her to the barn, and it ended up being like, I had this idea of we'll take her in the barn and shove her in the barn. Lacey had this idea of like gentle, kind approach. And I don't know, for those of you that are couples that, work together with your partner on the farm, there's sometimes ideas clash or ideas aren't talked about as they should be. And I always laugh thinking about like, there's like this meme about, someone gets to heaven and they're about to enter, and Peter at the pearly gates is like, you can enter heaven, except you're not going to be able to because of what you said while you were working cows. and I feel like that sometimes. I know some very down to earth people that admittedly don't handle working cows that well when it comes to push comes to shove, literally. But so we tried all kinds of things to get her in the barn, and she eventually kind of came in the barn. And I guess over days we started feeding her grain in the barn.
Mm-hmm. Alfalfa and sweet feed is what we were using.
Yeah.
So not really grain as you would normally feed a cow, I suppose. But yeah, just putting a little bit at a time in a trough on the other side of the head gate. And then so we've got the advice that you have to essentially close the head gate and keep it closed until they stop pulling.
So you have to trap 1,000-pound or more pound animal in a head gate, and then like hope that they don't break it, hope that they don't hurt themselves. And it was insane to see this happen. And my thought was, okay, we'll get her in there, she'll pull, she'll realize she can't get out, and then like that'll be it. Maybe we'll have to do it one more time. But
yeah, maybe we should backtrack too, because I think one of the issues was the day that we knew we were going to have to milk because the baby was born, and so there was this urgency to build the head gate and like a stanchion set up, and I was sick that day. So Drew and the kids worked hard and found all the lumber on our property and built this really nice setup with the like platform and the head gate and everything. And I wasn't there to offer any of my personal thoughts at the time, and I think that's where the conflict really started. Was my thoughts on how it should be built were different than what he found on the internet that they said they should happen. And so then we could see when she got there. So he built a nice like wooden platform so that she could step onto it and it could be cleaned and it would just be a little bit more sanitary. But that was the first thing that freaked her out. So, going in the barn was one. So the second thing, I guess, was really stepping on that wood, because she's never stepped on wood before a day in her life. And so it makes this wholly different sound. She doesn't have the grip that she has on regular grass.
She would like bring her hose up to the wooden platform and then like tap her front foot on it, and it would make that sound, and then she would like step backwards. It was kind of crazy.
And my thought is like, why did we build a platform? Because she's like, it's just one more thing, but that's what people on the internet say they do. And it seems like it makes sense. Yeah, you want to be able to sweep it off and clean it, but it just became this like other layer of confusion for her. And maybe if we'd been feeding her grain in that situation for a while, it wouldn't have been as big of a deal. I think also too, like animals influence other animals. So we don't have another milk cow. And so she doesn't see it happening and doesn't, have those conversations with the other milk cows in their milky cow language about how, oh no, this is okay. It doesn't hurt, just get it over. You'll get more grain, you'll get more whatever goodies at the end. And so that's not happening. We don't have any so I think like there's these benefits to having multiple animals that you don't really know until you realize, like if you have two dogs, the one dog learns from the other dog. I think that's true of all the animals. And you always know too that your herd is as bad as your worst animal. Like your worst animal is the worst, the influencer, the one who makes all the calls. And we've seen that with sheep too. It's like if we just got rid of that sheep, or if we just got a really docile sheep, then all the sheep would follow that one around. And I think that might be true with cows too, but we don't have that.
Well, somebody said to me, they're like, generally people start with a cow that's been trained and then buy a heifer to go with that one. So like you said, so that they can learn as they're growing up that's like the process, which I was like, well, that's not how we do things.
No, the harder, the better.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she didn't like getting on the wood. She's never seen another cow do this process. It's her first baby too. So she's, doing really well with that. But even the initial letting the baby suckle was like, no, I don't think so. And then, of course she caught on, but that was a little touch and go for a minute.
Yeah. Now she's a great mom.
Oh, she is. Yeah.
And I think like that was just, I don't know. It's like, it's funny because if it would have been a lamb, I would have been like, we'll give it a couple of days, watch, make sure. But like, because it was our first calf, I'm like, oh no, like, in the first 20 minutes of it hitting the ground, like something's wrong, we have to fix it, instead of like just being like, well, it's going to work out. But, so yeah. And then like in the process of all this, our loggers call and that we talked to like 9 months ago, and they're like, hey, we're coming out in 3 days.
We'll talk about that more on the next episode.
So it's like they have to drive right past the barn where we're trying to talk her into going into every day. So we set up a paddock on the other side of the barn, and if you don't know, a dairy cow goes through like 3 times the amount of grass that like a Dexter, which is our other cows, goes through. So we're like trying to reserve grass for her, let her have enough grass to stay alive and be healthy, but not eat up all the grass around the barn, because then she's too far away from the barn for us to like keep the habit of her coming to the barn.
Plus that needs to be grass for everybody.
Right.
So, yeah, it's tricky. It's very tricky. And I think that, adding that layer of regenerative, grazing it's extra, right? Like, so we just have all of these things working against us. And I think it gives us this opportunity to say, okay, really calling back on that holistic context of what is it that we really want out of this situation. And we don't want to be strapped to a cow that we have to milk twice a day. So that was never on the table. We were always going to calf share. We were always going to keep it simple. We did this with the goats when we milked them. Like, if we don't want to milk, then it's generally okay. Just leave the calf with the mama. And that's the setup that we need. And we thought, I think going into it, it would be more of a laid back process, procedure to get from, like not milking to milking. But so I don't know. Are we up to date? Where are we going from here?
Well, I think like now we're at the point where we had to go out of town again unexpectedly. So we put her back with the main herd. She's hanging out there. We're not building any kind of habit anymore. And we have to figure out like, there's like all these things. Of course, you join like the dairy cow groups, and then they're like, milk her in the field, put a collar on her, use a halter. She has to be on a head gate. It should be a wooden floor. It should be a mud floor. Like, and everybody is like dead set that their way is the only way.
Yeah, I'll say that there's a lot of great cow people out there and like helpful people, and everybody really, is encouraging on one hand. But then you have like 50% of the people who are like, there's really only one way to do this. And if you're not doing it that way, then we should call PETA.
Right.
Essentially. And as farmers, we've learned pretty surely the one thing that's true is that no one thing is true. Like it's different depending on personality of the animal. It's different depending on, again, your context. And, like there's just so many things to take into account. And it's this big puzzle all the time. And I'll say that I think it's fair to say that we did just get back into town this weekend. And we still haven't solved this puzzle.
Yeah. So, I think like one of the best pieces of, we've gotten a lot of really good advice, but the one thing that I think has really stuck out with me is our good friend, Steven, who said, he's like a zookeeper, and he said, you have to build like this trust bank, like this relationship with the cow. And generally we treat our animals like livestock. There's kind of like it's not a give and take relationship as much as like they're animals and we're people and they do their thing and we do our thing. But we're having to
interact
with Liesl. Yeah. We have to now, it has to be like, she has to trust us.
It's no longer a wild animal. Like we sort of.
Like we're helping manage the wild animal. Yeah. Now it's like, she has to.
She's now a family member.
Right. So she has to become a pet, essentially. And when he said that, like that kind of clicked for me. I think Lacey was already on that page, but for me, it was something that
I think for me, it was
helpful.
sort of the opposite. Like, I just didn't trust her, and I was not about to push and pull her, but you were more ready to do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm going to have to work up to her being willing to do this of her own accord, because I have, I hope it's a healthy respect or terror of this giant beast that could at any moment change her mind and, kick me or step on me or whatever she would want to do.
Yeah.
And I can't pretend like I have control over that situation.
Right. Yeah.
So I think actually in my understanding of how we've been dealing with her, like we tried the head gate thing. And honestly, I think that was a detriment to our progress. I think it made her distrust us 100%. Like,
right.
She didn't trust us. She didn't, no longer, she did it for 2 or 3 days and we would like kind of walk her in there. And then, and it did get shorter. So I thought we had made some headway in the head gate, but then she quit going in the barn altogether after that.
Yes and no. She wouldn't come to the head gate,
right.
But then we started feeding her on the other side of the head gate because our barn, you can walk in either side. Mm-hmm. And we kept feeding her in the same trough, and she started eating out of that trough. I would whistle for her. She would come running up there, eat out of that trough. Mm-hmm. And then before we left for town, I started working with her coming back to the stanchion side to stand on there to eat. And she was. But she was very reluctant to stick her head through the head gate. So we're kind of back. Yeah, I mean, I have
friends who are like, yeah, we just milk in the field and we just, we rotate our animals. So we just go out with a bucket and we milk her where she is, just on a lead. And in my mind, it's like, well, that might be our best option because we have this rotational thing going on. So maybe that's our best fit. But then there's no head gate in that situation.
There's no way to stop it from leaving.
And the truth is, like, we can squeeze milk out of her udders as long as she's standing still. She really doesn't mind us doing that, but she walks. So we have the joke that if we could just milk her while she's walking and like create a cart or something.
Yeah, like a little sidecar.
Yeah.
If you're out there and you've made one, let us know.
But yeah, I mean, we just need her to stand still for the period of time that it takes to milk. And yeah, we can't. I don't know. We're not there yet. So,
but I mean, one of our good friends, Matt, that's had dairy forever. He's like, this can take a long time. This can take like 5 weeks of trying. I think we're on week 2?
Maybe I think it's more like 3, 4, maybe.
I think at most week 3. Of trying and really working with her, and I feel like the logging has thrown a wrench in it. So I'm giving us like extra time.
I guess what I'm really curious to figure out now is like once we. She's already she's equalized or whatever her milk supply for the baby. So when we step in and start trying to get milk, what is that going to look like? Are we even going to be able to get any?
Right. And then we have to take the baby away, which is going to like make her
a whole nother level,
not trust us again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's a long journey. So
and the thing about too, like when we have done goats before. I mean, the goats are manageable. We can strap a goat down and hold a goat down, but you cannot do this. Cow has to be in compliance.
We watched a video the other day of this guy milking sheep, and he would literally put the sheep, like they would walk up to him head first. He'd put them between the head between his legs and like bend over and milk the sheep from the backside and then just let it go and then do the next one. And I was like, oh my gosh. If we could do that with Liesl, it would be a game changer. But
his legs essentially were the head gate.
Yeah, it was genius, but also made my back hurt.
Yeah.
Just thinking about it.
Yeah, but he was like 103 or something.
That's true.
So maybe it's the way to go.
Right. So that's our current journey on the milking process. I thought we would share that. That's real life homesteading. I feel like, you see all these things where people get cows and then they're like, I mean, you look on YouTube and it's like how to milk a cow in 6 days or 6 hours or 6 minutes. And it's like, all right, there's more to it. It's hard. And surely we're not the first ones I know we're not, to be starting from 0 or maybe negative. I don't know. But yeah. So follow us along on the journey. We'll keep you updated as we continue the process of trying to milk her or giving up. Either way.